thank you very much. Welcome to our April presentation,
Gracias.
Special Education PTA in Redwood City. Today's topic is Universal Design for Learning. I'm very passionate about this, so I'm looking forward to our presentation. Just a couple of things for those who who's joining us for the first time. We are SEPTAR, Special Education PTA, and we have a board. And I'm gonna go around and people are gonna introduce themselves. My name is Elena Livina. I'm the president of SEPTAR, and I have 2 kids in the district. My younger son is in 1st grade at Clifford, and he is in some of the gen education classes and some in the self-contained class environment. And I have a daughter also in North Star. I'm going to pass it on to Jessica.
Hi, I'm Jessica. I'm the treasurer. I have 2 kids at Clifford. My daughter Samantha is in 1st grade, and my son Andrew is in TK, and he is a full inclusion student. Do you want to go to Michelle next? Because I think we kind of skipped her.
Sorry, just popcorn. Out of order.
Hi, I'm Michelle Gagliardi. I'm the secretary at SEPTAR. I have 2 kids. I've got one right here if you can kind of see him. My 17-year-old, he's at Sequoia High School. He's graduating this year from the Independent Living Skills Program. And then I also have an 8-year-old at Roosevelt. He is in an extensive support needs class, but he is also included about half the time in gen ed. And I don't know if Amanda is here.
Doesn't look like our other 3 other members are not here today. The 4 members. So only 3 of us here today. Maybe they will join a little bit later, hopefully. Okay, let's go on who we are. So I kind of already said we are PTA. What we do, we organize workshops like tonight. We are hopefully gonna start an enrichment program next year. This is our plans to raise enough money to start a program that is inclusive. And we collaborate with our district on disability awareness events. And we organize social gatherings. This is our mission and vision. And treasure support.
All right. I had to leave last time suddenly. So we have 2 to go through really quickly today. For last month, we had a donation that someone made through Benevity of $400 that went into our accounts. And then can we go to the next slide? So this past month, we had some people either buy memberships or make a donation through that link that was on the page earlier in Totem. And so that's the deposit you see there for $63.25. And then 3 of the 4 checks so far have gone through as a small payment that we made to the self-advocacy panel members from last month's meeting. Does anyone have any questions? All right, then I think that's good. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. Here we are, our presenters for today. We welcome Zoni Boyer and Chad Slife, I hope I pronounced it right, from Center for Access and Engagement in our San Mateo County Office of Education. And we're gonna hear about universal design for learning tonight. So please take it away. I can stop sharing mine and you guys can share your presentation.
Thanks, Helena. I'll go ahead and get that launched. Give me just a moment. All right. Everything looking good on your end? All right, excellent. Good evening, everyone. I'm Chad Slife, and I'm a coordinator in the Center for Access and Engagement in the San Mateo County Office of Education. And I'm here with my amazing colleague, Zoni Boyer. And we'll go ahead and introduce ourselves before we launch into what we're going over tonight. We also have Spanish slides, so I'll just take a moment to make sure those are seen as well. So a little bit about us. I present as white and Hispanic. I'm from Riverside, California, but I've lived in the Bay Area for almost 2 decades. I'm a very proud first-generation college graduate. And like Zoni, I literally just wrapped up my doctorate this month to join the ranks of doctorhood with Zoni. Proud husband and dog daddy living in Daly City. I used to moonlight as a certified personal trainer and spin instructor. So when we talk about, well, what do we do outside of being an educator? I love fitness and I'm obsessed with it. So if I'm not at the county office of ed or working at a school site, you normally will see me running or at the gym. I have over 20 years site experience. I started as a Teach for America Corps member and I was a teacher in middle school, then became an assistant principal, served as a principal for many years in San Francisco and then San Mateo. And about a year ago, I came over very excitedly to join the San Mateo County Office of Education. And I always like to pass the baton because Zoni and I share the same value that we love the work we do because we put students first in every way, shape, or form.
My name is Zoni Boyer. I identify as Black, and I'm a single mother of a son who will be 20 this year of disabilities. He has autism, ADHD, and severe generalized anxiety disorder. I'm an Air Force veteran. I've been teaching or in the field of education for almost 20 years. I started off as a paraeducator in what was then called moderate severe classrooms. They're now extensive supports needs classrooms. I am duly credentialed in moderate severe and a mild moderate special education. I've been an administrator going on 7 years now, and I've worked in the capacity of middle school as an educator and as an administrator. I've worked for districts, SELPAs, and now the county office.
Just giving time for our folks with Spanish again. And then we really are thankful for the invitation tonight. I know Zoni helped arrange this. And so tonight we're going to go just into some aspects of universal design for learning, or, in the world of education, we love acronyms, otherwise known as UDL. And so Zoni will be sharing with you just really understanding, as many of you know, in this Zoom should know or do know, learner variability. And then we'll go into a little behind the why behind UDL, and then explore some of the important principles of UDL. There are 3 of them, and how we try to institute them all the time in the classroom. So those are what we'll be going over with you tonight.
So when we do present, we do like to say that this work is social justice work, and it's very important that we say that, and that's the message, because this is a mindset shift. Chad, can you go to the Spanish slide? Because what that means is this isn't just you're implementing certain strategies. This is you changing how the classroom completely looks. Teachers are moving from, in the classroom up front to moving towards giving students more power, students choice, students getting to decide on the content and deciding and learning about themselves. So this is social justice work. This is allows for everyone who learns differently to be able to access their educational environments. Next slide. And so what the UDL really looks at is learner variability, and it's saying that learner variability and basically human difference is what is the norm. There is no average student. You can go to the Spanish slide. And that is because if we take in consideration that we all learn differently, then that means we need to just kind of be proactive and help everyone, right? And if everyone was 6 feet tall and had broad shoulders and was male, then we wouldn't have a need for different sizes of doors or homes or rooms or beds or bathrooms or whatever. So the idea is that learning is the same way. Everyone processes information differently, whether you have a disability or not. And so when it comes to learner variability, and where we can really start to include kids more is when we're proactive in our learning environments and setting those up so that we can include the students who struggle or need a little bit more differentiation. Because oftentimes students who need, pictures, supports, or more choice or more breaks, that's not necessarily the student who has a disability. I've seen plenty of students, even adults, in giving professional development, they still need all of those supports when they engage in their learning. So next slide. So the idea behind learner variability is just really taking into consideration and taking into account that there is human difference and that everyone learns differently. And like when you scaffold and give supports and be proactive, then you don't have to work as hard to give a support to an individual support to every single student, right? Like the more differentiated assistance that we see that in special ed classrooms, that's very different, right? When students need Big Macs to talks or to communicate, or they need translation services like ASL, students who require ASL, that's very different, right? And so that's something that needs to be considered. So Spanish slide, sorry. Okay, yeah, you're there. So it's really just about setting up classroom environments so that you're a proactive educator and that everyone can access.
Now, what Zoni and I love doing, we get to go all around the county and helping schools, school sites, teachers, special educators, counselors really look into the first thing doing with UDL is reducing the barriers in the classroom so that everyone has access to their learning. And barriers range from ones we can see to ones we cannot see. Just an example, they can be a physical impairment that a child may be grappling with, and it can be a student who is in fear of immigration. And so there are many barriers that we try to work with educators to try to eliminate them as much as possible. So students, one, feel safe in their classroom, but secondly, they can actually access their learning. And so what's also unique about UDL is it's nothing new. It's just we're giving a lot of common language, and that's why it's become a very popular thing, that a lot of the terms Zoni and I are going to introduce to you tonight are terms that are being more universally used within the educational system. But a lot of us within the educational field, even at Home for Parents, have been using a lot of these strategies for years. We just didn't have the common terminology. And so we hope to give some of that to you tonight. So going into barriers here, one of the main researchers within UDL, and she has a whole slew of books and videos out there if you really want to get into the dirty of UDL, is Dr. Katie Novak. And so we always like to include Dr. Novak in what we talk about because she has really illustrated a lot of the work that's important. And it is, as she says here, not just about providing tools for our students, but really giving the access so they can have the experience in the classroom and eliminate the barriers so they can succeed. And so I don't know, many of you may know her, kind of a YouTube celebrity, but Zoni and I always like to introduce Shelly Moore. She has a whole series, 5 More Minutes. And so this one really illustrates for all of us all the barriers that are out there in relation to and not in relation to special education. So we're going to enjoy about a 5-minute video from Shelly Moore.
Welcome to 5 more minutes. Useful videos in about 5 minutes. Welcome to 5 more minutes. Useful videos in about 5 minutes that support the teaching and learning of all students. I'm your host, Shelley Moore, and today's episode is called Reducing the Barriers, Planning for All. Hey everyone, today we're talking about something very important. Today we're talking about shifting a paradigm. Now, one thing that I'm not sure everybody realizes is that in our efforts to move towards more inclusion and equity in our schools, is that one of the biggest barriers is the actual infrastructure of the existing educational model. You see, me, like many of us who work in education, we were taught how to support students through a special education lens. That is a model where a plan is made for most students and then special support is offered to those students who don't have success in that original plan. This special support then seeks to figure out, well, what's wrong with the student in question, and then offers support in a way by offering adaptations and modifications so that they can fit into the first plan. What if nobody fits into the plan? Because of how we were all taught to support students, as our classrooms have become more diverse, there's been this overwhelming feeling that inclusion is so much work because more and more students need this type of retrofit support in order to be successful. Okay, now listen, I have never met a teacher that can follow more than one plan. So a big question emerging here is, how do we make one plan for all learners from the start so that we can be effective and efficient and then not have to retrofit for all of the learners that don't fit? In order to do this, we need to shift how we think about and respond to students who are struggling. You see, special education evolved out of a medical model. So for example, like if you break your leg, you go to the doctor and then they fix you. And if they can't fix you, they send you to a specialist. We get medical attention when something is wrong. This is special education. It's designed to react to students when something is wrong. And as a result, our educational system has become so heavily reliant on processes that emphasize failure, expensive evaluations, and intervention systems that focus on the deficits in students. Well, something that we can learn from the disability community is that just because a person is struggling doesn't mean they're broken. People don't need to be fixed. So then how do we respond to students in a way that meets their needs without creating programs and following processes for only targets what's wrong? Well, I will tell you this. We need to move away from the medical model, that's for sure. So what can we do instead? Well, one alternative is to shift towards a social model. In a social model, if someone isn't having success, it's not because they have a disability or because something's wrong with them as an individual, but instead it's because there's something around them in the context that's limiting their success. Now listen, I spend a lot of time traveling, mostly throughout North America, but about 2 years ago, I had the opportunity to speak at a conference in Hong Kong. Now, I was so excited about this. I've never been to Hong Kong, so my wife and I, we packed our bags and we were ready to go on our great Hong Kong adventure. Well, I was so excited that I didn't really anticipate that I would have different needs in Hong Kong than I do in North America. Typically, I would feel pretty independent in my travels. I would rent a car, I would drive, no problem. I would be able to navigate conversations and menus and directions and be able to find the conference hall that I'm presenting in, easy peasy. But in Hong Kong, I realized I needed much more support to be able to do these very similar things. Like I wasn't able to rent a car. I didn't have the right driver's license. I wasn't able to have many conversations, read menus, or follow directions because there was a language barrier. I also had no idea where I was speaking because I couldn't read any of the conference signs. I needed a lot of support in Hong Kong. Thank goodness the organization who brought me there anticipated this and made 3 Hong Kong EAs available to me if I needed them. I had a driver, I had a translator, I had a host, but I couldn't help think to myself, like, that's so many resources for one person. What's important to know about this example is that whether I'm in North America or whether I'm in Hong Kong, I'm still the same person. My success and independence in Hong Kong had very little to do with me as an individual and had more to do with the barriers that existed around me. Now, I want you to imagine all the students that you work with, every teacher they interact with, every classroom and school they go to. I want you to think about all these different contexts as possible different countries. Students are the same regardless of where they go. What changes is the context around them. And every context is going to have more or less barriers that can either support or limit success. So how do we support kids this way? Well, first of all, we have to anticipate these barriers, which means we can't wait for students to not be successful. We can't wait for them to fail. Second, we have to stop putting all of our resources into trying to fix individuals. If we move away from this kind of student diagnosis and intervention as the first strategy, it allows us to assess the environment and the context first to find out what's getting in the way. Because the big idea here is this, my friends. The more we support a context to reduce barriers, the less individual resources a person will need to be successful. The social model of support is a foundational understanding to planning for all students and directly connects to universal design for learning, response to instruction, and collaborative models of support. It would be very difficult to try and implement any of these frameworks if we were only looking at students through a medical and deficit-based perspective. Students are not broken. They may need support, but today's challenge is asking, instead, look around the student to see how can we fix the context so that barriers are reduced instead of looking at what we can do to fix the students in their deficit area. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of 5 More Minutes. Make sure you take a look at the 5 More Minutes podcast where we dig deeper into some of these big ideas. Give us a like. Don't forget to subscribe. You don't want to miss any of these episodes. I'll see you next time.
All right, so I love that video for many reasons. One, her energy. Shelley Moore has the most amazing energy, but also the analogy of the Hong Kong scenario and with the barriers. So I'd love to see just in the chat really quick, if you can remember some of the barriers she faced going to Hong Kong that had to be eliminated, because I love the analogy there of that she connects that experience to what our students face in the classroom. And then most importantly, for her final analysis there and conclusion of saying, if we just eliminated barriers for all of our students, they all could succeed. And so again, that is getting to the point of why UDL is so fantastic. And thanks, Michelle, for putting right there. Language was a big one for her. That was a major barrier that many of our students in San Mateo County and Redwood City experience every day, a language barrier. So thinking about how can we reduce that barrier is just one example of how we get into UDL.
Okay, so looking at UDL, it challenges at the average learner, that myth of the average learner. It addresses human difference and variability. It's really about being proactive, and then there's 3 principles that go with it. So engagement, representation, and action, and it ties to the 3 different areas of the brain. So the what, the why, and the how, the affective, strategic, and recognition networks of the brain. You can go to the Spanish slide. And what it really is showing us is that when you are able to plan and remove the barriers, then more students are able to access. And like here, I really want people to kind of understand that this is the difference between like universal design of learning and differentiated instruction, which a lot of people get confused because you see a lot of things used in differentiated instruction. And people saying like, oh no, it's not different than universal design for learning. It's completely different. Universal design for learning means it's universal and it's something that everyone gets. Everyone gets it. It's not differentiated for any one person or small group of people. And as an example, when I was the extensive supports needs teacher, even in an SDC class, universally, all of my students had schedules. Universally, all of my students, they all got breaks. Universally, they all got snacks. Universally, they all got the same expectations, learning expectations. The differentiation came with like students with one-on-ones, students who needed more time, students who needed way more breaks than what was normally built into the day, students who needed toileting, students who needed different sort of blocks because they had sensory needs, like the t-shirts. I had to keep like tagless tees in my classroom because some parents would send their students with t-shirts and with the tags, and it would bother them. And so we knew we'd have to switch those out and be proactive, right at the start of the day. So it doesn't, there's no, he doesn't get upset or they don't get upset throughout the day. And in a mild, moderate environment that looks more like universally, we all have the same expectations. Universally, I still rely on timers and schedules and centers and things like that. But the differentiation really came depending on students' IEPs, whether that was more time on test or retaking tests and things like that. So that is the difference. Universal is what they all get. Differentiated is very specific to the individual or the small group. So when we're looking at the principles, The first one, engagement, you should just probably click them all so that we could show the Spanish slide. Okay, so the first one, engagement, is the how network, and it's really about recruiting interest and sustaining effort, and self-regulation. And like, this is where you'll see things where students are able to like show student choice. You want to have like things like small groups. You'll see those kind of examples because it fosters like collaboration. This is where you really building your sense of belonging for the students. You're building relationships here. You want to minimize like distractions and things like that, where, you know, students need to sit closer to the front, or if they need to sit in the back, because that's how they work better that way. You want to really pay attention to those things. Well, educators pay attention to those things. And self-regulation also is a very important one. And that's really when students really start to learn how to like know when they need to take a break. That's why this principle is so important, because it's building so many self-determination skills that students need. And oftentimes students with disabilities aren't given a lot of opportunities to engage in self-determined acts. So when we kind of build our classrooms in a way that lets them naturally do those things, it helps, because then they can become more autonomous and show more like agency. And then representation, the what principle, that's like what we're learning. That's when you're looking at your perception, your language and your symbols, and your comprehension. Is where you see the visuals, translation, you're making sure there's representation, like cultural representation and things like that. You want to build on past knowledge, past learnings and things like that. Support with decoding text. Like, this is where you're building a lot of support so that when it comes time to the learning, they can engage with it and they can find out things on their own. And you know, if you leave students to just do a Google search and say, write me a paper, Google is huge, right? So you have to scaffold that. So that's where we're kind of getting to the representation piece, and you're making sure you're covering all of those bases, and you're really looking at the perception, the language and symbols, and the comprehension. You want to maximize transfer of skills, and so they can generalize things in different areas, right? And especially students with disabilities, especially when you're thinking about communication and behavior, or what I like to say ways of being, is you want them to not only be able to engage in those things in one environment, right? Like, so they need opportunities to practice and show that they can communicate how they communicate to get what they need and get what they want, right? And then the last one, the how section of the brain, the blue, is the action and expression. And it's, for me as an educator, it was the most fun, because that's when students get to show what they know and how, and they show it how they want to show it. And that's the whole idea behind that section, is like, you give them choice in how they're going to demonstrate their learning, whether it's through physical action, expression and communication, or executive functions. You want to, you know, teachers can give like PowerPoints or papers or speeches or songs or playlists or plays or movies, or there's like educators can do a lot of amazing things when it comes to allowing students to be able to demonstrate their learning. And so when you kind of tie in a lot of those things, all of the three principles kind of work together, right? So if you're giving choice, that is involved with engagement, but it's also very much involved with action and expression. And then expression and communication, having them be able to communicate in multiple ways, right? Like, not every person can speak English, not every person can speak in general, not every person can write in any language or at all, or hold a pencil or do anything, like, you know, a lot of things that we kind of sometimes, when we're able to do it, we take for granted. And so when you're wanting to build fluencies and things like that, you want to give them a lot of support so that they can engage in all of their things. And even if they can't do it, some students don't want to. Some students aren't comfortable with like speaking out loud or doing oral reports and things like that. So there's making sure that you give different ways that they can express and communicate. I used to give my students signs if they needed help, because they didn't want to be seen as needing help. So they would just like little flip desks, like just flip the chart over, and then I know to go over there and no one sees it, and they don't feel like as they don't feel embarrassed to need help. And that was a form of communication. And then definitely executive functions. And we're really looking at trying to like teach students how to like set goals, facilitate and manage information, right? Like teaching them how to scaffold and pare things down. So when you're giving them all those options and you're really giving them control over how they learn, what they're learning, and how to tell you what they learned, you're opening up a whole different world to them, right? And you're really building on their skills, and you're telling them how much they're valued, right? Like what they bring to the table is valuable. So that is the 3 principles. So we have another video. This is a really good video. It's a little bit long. It's about 9 minutes, but this is a really good video. So as a demonstration of what UDL looks like in the classroom. Chad, you have to unmute.
I know a lot of teachers that I know were very successful.
Let's start that over. I thought I had unmuted. I was so focused on getting the captions. There we go.
My name is Eric Crouch, and I teach 5th grade. My journey as a learner is very different, I think, than a lot of teachers that I know. A lot of teachers that I know were very successful in school, and unfortunately, I didn't have a lot of that success in school. And so one of the things that I remember very well was being in a kindergarten class and having someone pull me aside because I couldn't get the work done because I just didn't have the ability to do the task the way they wanted it done and the environment that it needed to be done. I was very distracted and I couldn't really give my best effort. And I didn't really feel that there was a level of support that helped me get to a place where I could be successful. As a student with attention deficit hyperactive disorder, that clearly had a huge impact on me as a person. It also has a huge impact on me as a teacher. And so it influences every decision that I make in the classroom. And it's something that I still work through and work with. So as students come into my room, I want them to have that same feeling, and I want their parents to have that same comfort. I want them to know that when they come in here that although we may not be where we want to be, we're going to work together to find ways in which we can show our understanding that makes sense to the learner and find resources and tools that help them discover those passions through their learning that will allow them to be the best and most successful student they can. One of the ways that we represent information to kids in different ways is sometimes we find that kids don't take whole group instruction very well. The attention, the focus, it's not there. And so the best thing for me to do is to pose a question. You had a plan, your plan worked, it just you had a lot of sediment fall behind the dam. Now that you have that information, now that you've broken it, what do you know about that? And then from there, I will have either created resources or opportunities for those kids to have access points or entry points into the learning, whether that's a short video clip that I've recorded that gives them the next step, or whether that's an opportunity for a small group discussion to take place right there in the classroom. It then gives me an opportunity to come in and help them find those access points into where they're going to start their journey. Because I really think it's important to have a clear starting line to their journey. They understand, okay, this is where we're starting. This is the direction we're going. So the way we set up our room, it has centers like that where kids can access resources and materials. And we really think it's important that all kids have access to the different materials that they might need, but also that there are certain places where we do certain types of work. What we find is that some kids are more drawn to certain types of hands-on activities, whereas other kids need spaces that are a little less hands-on and a little bit more minds-on. Maybe that's like a station where they can be at a computer and they can kind of stand and research. So as a teacher, one of the most interesting things you'll find is that teachers like to have control. The issue that I found with that was that when I gave up control, it felt like we were in this murky water. It was just not clear what was going to happen. But what I realized in giving up control was that I'm giving up control to the people who deserve to have the control. And so when I came to the understanding that the students in the room who are responsible for learning the material, who are going to be responsible for taking jobs in our community at some point, they're going to be responsible for being the nurses and the doctors that are going to be helping people, change lives as they grow up and become adults. They need to be in control of this. And it doesn't need to be me telling them what they need to do. It needs to be them figuring out how they want to do it. There's nothing wrong with intentionally putting something into place to try to keep the community safe. Why don't you research it before you commit to it or decommit to it and see if there's any evidence that points to this being successful? Kind of to think about it like going to the gym. I was doing all of the work as the trainer and having the kids come in, and here I am lifting all the weights and then handing them a lighter set and saying, oh, good, you did it. Yay, we all know what to do now. Instead, now I'm more of a trainer in the sense that I set up the room, where I put out the weights, I have them ready for whatever exercises they're going to be working on, but they're doing all the heavy lifting. I had this kind of aha moment and said, what if I stopped influencing what the kids used and how they used it, and instead had the kids come in and figure out where they learn best, with whom they learn best with, and in what part of the room they learn best. And so I began giving my students free choice, free seating options, wherever that might be. If it's standing, if it's needing to take a break and be in a different part of the room, it was fair game. One of the really neat things about watching kids explore their own learnings is to see how kids demonstrate their understanding. And so I've had students create songs to explain a time period, maybe that's the Spanish-American War, and they take specific details and write a song, and then they sing it or compose it or record it at home and then share it with the class. And that is just such a special way to connect to the learning. That's the way they understand, and that's where they feel most comfortable. So then that's a great opportunity for you. But I've also seen kids bake cakes in different layers to explain the beginning, middle, and end of a story so that they can decorate it with all of the settings and all of the characters, but then what happens in each layer, and have chunks taken out that showcase all of the different things that happen in the story, because that's how they understood it. And to me, if I were to just say, oh, let's do a cereal box, and you're just going to do the beginning, middle, and end on the back, and the cover on the front, and on the side, you're going to list the characters, I would have lost the opportunity to really see how special their thinking was and to see how special their creativity was. So eventually, what do you think was going to happen?
This was going to fall down, and this probably would have fallen down too.
So if that didn't fall, do you think this would have happened as quickly? Being able to give back and support my students in this way is one of the most rewarding and special moments of being a teacher. Is I have been right where you've been. And I think we can work through this in a way that will really empower you to better understand who you are as a learner and to give you an advantage that I didn't have as a student. I truly believe that our students, all the problems that we have in our world are trapped inside of our students' passions. And if we can pursue those passions, we can solve those problems. And so really getting to know our students is one of the most important things that we do because it helps us and it helps reveal to us the things that students are really, really exceptional at. And if we can bring those exceptional gifts and talents into the classroom setting and allow them to use that in order to showcase their learning and understanding, one of the interesting things about changing the design to a more universal design was to see how well kids learned their learning. Like, and I know it sounds really complicated and really simple at the same time, but what happened was the kids start to take an interesting look at where they sit because they have a choice to sit wherever they want. They have an interesting understanding of how that dynamic plays into who they sit next to and for what subjects they work with those people on. And so some kids will switch up where they sit between math and writing because they better they need to be closer to the board for math, or maybe they need to be further in the back for writing so that they can have that privacy that they need. Everything about our class is designed around our students and their desires. By working to better understand each other, not only does it build community, but it helps solve the needs of those learners. So being flexible is, again, more than about just where the kids sit and how they sit, but it's about a mindset of saying, I'm willing to allow my kids to explore this because it might be better for them than what I could think of. I can't really think of a better way to honor the student and their learning than to give them that opportunity to showcase just who they are as a learner and who they are as a human.
Yeah, so that video is a really good illustration of what UDL looks like in a typical, classroom. And I think one of, well, he said a lot of important things, but I think one of the things that is, you can go, I think one of the things that's important is that as educators, sometimes educators, it's hard for educators to get out of their own way and to get out of their own traditional ways of thinking, because that's not how we were taught and that's not how we learn. And oftentimes that's what we impose on our students. Like as an example, I had a substitute para one time and she kept, we were doing math and she kept erasing my student's number 8 that he was writing. And I saw the escalation. I'm like, don't worry, just let's just take a break. Cause I thought maybe he was doing the problem wrong. He was drawing too many circles. I don't know. And she was erasing it because he wasn't drawing a figure 8. He was drawing just the 2 O's on top of each other. And because she was stuck in her traditional mindset and how she learns and how she processes, it completely dysregulated my student and then made him feel like he was failing. So if educators, when we learn to get out of the way of the students, they'll be fine. And there's nothing wrong if they get an answer wrong. Like that's how they'll learn. They'll learn to get over the hurdle themselves. So UDL is something that, like Chad said, it's been around for at least 30 years. But it's a mindset shift. It's not just a bunch of strategies you do in a classroom.
And so like to carry that on, just like what you saw throughout the video, what Mr. Crouch, the teacher, was doing was he was releasing that control, like Zoni just shared, and giving it to the students. And I love that he referenced how where he saw his students 5-10 years from now becoming adults. And that's this goal here of UDL, when we're wanting them to become an expert learner. And that is where we want them to be excited about learning and to do all these tenets you see here. I know it's a lot of text on this slide, but there's a lot of important things here that we really want to help our students to embody now or hopefully someday. And you see things under engagement that they're eager for the new learning. They want to learn. They want to keep growing. They are able to make goals for themselves and challenge themselves. Really important there is knowing how to like sustain the effort when things get hard and be resilient when things get hard, to be able to bounce back and continue on their journey. And then be able, that last tenet under engagement, really hard sometimes. And we have to help our students a lot with all the tools and have all those universal tools open to everyone so they can really monitor and regulate their emotions to when they especially face a barrier or a challenge, because we want to help them get that resilience. So, okay, I can do this, I can overcome it. Then you see under representation, we really have to make sure that we are acknowledging and bringing all the funds of knowledge that our students bring to the classroom, all that prior knowledge, that background knowledge, so they can make those connections in their learning, because then it's just that much more impactful. Helping them organize that information, recognizing all the tools and resources they bring as a learner to the classroom and using those to find new information. And then knowing how to change that information so it's meaningful to them and they're able to relay it to others, all within the representation. And then lastly, you see in action expression, you also have that they're able to, along with making their goals, they're able to really grapple and wrestle with that learning and make sense of it, come up with the strategies for themselves, monitor their progress. Again, all about organizing resources and tools, whether they're actually tangible or not. Again, recognizing their strengths and weaknesses so they can go and say, I need extra help with this, and I know that, or I'm really good at this, and I got it. And then being able to abandon strategies that are not effective. And that's something I know I even grapple with still as a learner, as I hold on to these tried and true things that used to be tried and true. And then I was, oh, that doesn't work for me anymore. So I'm still on my expert learner journey too. Now, the final four components we have here that we started to address and just share with you tonight, I know it was a brief time, was these four pieces. Zoni shared about the learner variability. So just acknowledging all the types of learners in a classroom, in a school, in a home, being able to have firm goals for our learners. We didn't go into that too much tonight, but we do often tell more about like helping students create their own goals, and that goes into helping them become expert learners. Being able to reduce barriers, again, in the classroom, so all students have the access to their learning. And then lastly, that ultimate goal of helping create expert learners in the classroom or school environment. And so those, again, are those core components of universal design for learning that we want to make very well known. So outside of that, I'm just checking the chat before we go. Okay, good. Nothing related to us, so we're okay. We'd love to know if you have any questions while we still have some time.
Thank you so much. That was amazing. Thank you, Zoni. Thank you, Chad. Such a great presentation. I'm still on my journey to learn about universal design for learning, and it feels like there's always something new that you learn about it. And I actually have a question, I guess. Scaffolding is something that Zoni mentioned a couple of times, and I think some people don't know what it means. Could you kind of clarify that?
Yeah, so scaffolding is when you have things in place to kind of help support the foundation, and like the way I always think of it is, I think of New York, and in movies, and the sidewalk always has those scaffolds holding up like the building because they're always doing some sort of construction. So in order to kind of build on the foundation, and in order to complete the project, you have to put in these scaffolds to kind of help the process. So oftentimes scaffolds are different supports that teachers will include in their lessons so that students can access the information or build on what they already know, right? So if it's like anything like graphic organizers or like sentence starter, sentence frames, I used a lot of closed notes in my class. I used a lot of different, like teaching students their phone numbers. Like once they, like, let's say they would remember the area code and it was like a Velcro activity, we would take away the area code, right? And then like put the rest. You'll see it a lot also in like behavior analysis and like ABA type therapy. You kind of like start taking away certain things to get the student more independent. So it's just different supports that you add, and so that to build on what they already know, or to like supply like new knowledge.
Thank you. Dr. Mulholland.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the presentation. I really appreciate it. Hey, I have a question about how UDL fits into MTSS. And so MTSS, multi-tiered systems of supports, is one of the goals in our district plan, the LCAP plan. How does UDL complement that or belong to that? Thank you.
Yeah, it's in more of the acronym world. It's like alphabet soup. It is part of MTSS, but it's really just how we should instruct. So it's a universal tool. So if we're talking about tiers, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, UDL falls within tier 1 because we're giving universal access for all students. But within MTSS framework, it's just an important component of how we teach, how we instruct. They really just go hand in hand because it is a system that we're using to support our students. Yeah, I used to have to, as a principal, I had to write a lot of those for our goals. And so it just all works together to make the classroom more effective.
Thank you so much.
Any more questions?
Yeah. First time on this meeting, I'm a lot lost over here. So this program, for instance, my daughter goes to over here at Kennedy. So it's a great presentation. How all these gonna work benefit my daughter over here at Kennedy, or how Kennedy use this program? I don't know how to lay out this question.
Well, we don't know how all of you guys' students or children are, like, what's happening in their classrooms. The idea behind universal design of learning is definitely creating environments where everyone can access. So it's if you have extensive needs and you need quite a bit of support in the classroom, what we're saying with universal design of learning is, like, you should be able to go to a gen ed class, and still have the same expectations of learning as the other students, as any other student, but what you're giving to support that learning is different based on all of the proactive things that whatever the teacher planned for. So the teacher may have planned for PowerPoints, the teacher may have planned for visuals, the teacher may have planned for videos and having audio and having a guest speaker and have all of those things to address as many concerns as she can. But then there's, maybe a student who is deaf and hard of hearing, and so she knows that she also needs to plan for an ASL interpreter. So universal design of learning is just universally planning your classroom. I'm not sure if what you're describing is more of like differentiated instruction, like if a student needs like more support than what's already given to everybody else, that would be something different. But we don't know what your schools are doing and where they are in their UDL journey.
I can speak a little bit, Mr. Espino. I work at the district office, and I know that Kennedy, the principal there, Chandra Leonardo, is very committed to meeting the needs of diverse learners, all of her students with and without disabilities, and all of the staff this year have participated in training on universal design for learning so that they can better support children with diverse learning needs. They've been doing a course of professional development over the course of the year. So it is being used at middle school for, I don't know if it's your son or daughter who attends Kennedy, but their teachers are being learning about this way of working.
Thank you. I'm sorry for asking that question. I just, like I said, first time, and I was a little lost on it. Thank you for the explanation.
This is a great question. Thank you so much. And the way we hold these presentations is to give you an information to bring back to your school maybe, and then say like, look, there is this presentation. Introduce it to your teachers, to your principals, and they can learn more about this. Katie.
Okay, sorry, I just came out to lower my hand. So I guess one of my questions is, knowing an individual student's strengths are kind of what helps them in different subjects. My question is, I've noticed that with like parent-teacher conferences that we've had, they've definitely been involving the student in kind of coming up with their own goals and things like that. But one of the things I kind of wondered about is those usually are happening a bit into the school year, versus I'm wondering if there's really any kind of like a handoff almost of like strategies of learning styles from previous years to new years. I know sometimes they consider that with, a student that has an IEP and has specific needs, but I think with any student, does some of that kind of handoff or learning style information happen from year to year so the incoming teacher kind of has an idea of how students might differ for each of the lessons, versus kind of figuring out over the span of a month or something, and then at teacher parent conference try to strategize on things. That was just a thought I was having, if that's something that is in place, or have they tried it? I don't know.
I think that's a super great idea, Katie. And I am not sure what specific sites are doing right now to support students transitioning between grade levels. I know there's a lot of informal conversations, right? Because teachers talk to each other in the yard and at lunch, and checking in and asking questions, the new teacher asking questions from the previous teacher. In some systems I've worked in, there are opportunities for teachers to meet and with the previous teacher and find out about the students. But I'm going to say it's individual to each site, and sites would have a vested interest in doing that. Also, when they plan the makeup of their classrooms, I know they go through each individual child to make sure that they get a really nice mix of kids in each class. And sometimes some children are better matched to a specific teacher for whatever reason. So I think if you want to bring that up at your site, that would be really good. And I can bring it back to principals and maybe get some more information to share with you about how that's happening.
Yeah, I thought it might just be a nice way to work with inclusivity, because I know with, kids with special needs, they certainly have some of those considerations, but it might be nice to know, like, oh, this student really engages with this subject and likes to learn this way, and it's similar to someone, okay, has other strategies, so that way they can kind of be grouped together, versus if they have different styles, it might be more challenging. But it might just be nice to have it for like, almost like, I wouldn't say like a passport, but like something that follows them in terms of ways that they enjoy learning.
I'm pretty sure also, Katie, that when teachers get a new class, they do review the file for all of their kids as well. Like every child has a general education file, just so they can get like be prepared, right? Because they're meeting these children on the first day. But I'll bring it back to the principals for sure.
I also want to add that when we universally design classrooms and give that exposure to our variable learners, they will take charge of their own learning, like in that video described, and they can advocate for themselves moving forward, and they can say like, oh, I better learn this way, and they can have their preferences and suggest those to teachers. So to me, that's what's behind UDL, raising individuals who know what kind of learner they are. Any more questions? I want to say hi to Mike Wells, representative of our board, school board. Thank you for being here tonight. We have a good group of people. I see some people I know. Somebody asked Trish in the chat about NDNU education program. I'm not sure what this is. We can look into it. Okay, Michelle, do you have any questions?
I was just thinking, like, is UDL taught at the university level in like general education classes? I mean, I'm like, Elena, I know you're in school right now. I'm assuming you're learning about UDL to become a special education teacher, but what about, if somebody wants to become a math teacher or a science teacher? Like, are they being exposed to these concepts before they become a teacher? Because, you know, when in the video with Mr. Couch, he was saying, that's a barrier. Like, teachers are uncomfortable because that's not how they were taught to teach. So I'm wondering, are the folks who are being taught to teach now, are they learning these frameworks so that they can come into the classroom and be ready to serve the diverse needs of all their students?
Hi, this is Trish. I would just posted the question with the NDNU, and sorry, I had to run away from my kids and hop on, but it actually stands for Notre Dame de Namur University, which is right up here in Belmont, which is where I got my degree in school. So that was my exact question that you just asked. So it's great timing. Is this being exposed to the students in the programs at that level before they go in? You know what I mean? Like, catch them while they're getting their student teaching credentials and student teaching, and have them start incorporating that into their curriculum.
I can kind of answer this. I don't know of every credentialing program or certification program in the state. I know at Cal State East Bay, quite a few of their in their credentialing program, they do teach a lot of like the UDL principles and things like that. But there is also a lot of research that shows that even when you're taught this way in a credentialing program, you still revert back to teach how you were taught as a child. So I think people tend to fall back on what they feel comfortable with. And UDL, if you're not comfortable with it, it's easier to just say, I'm just going to print out a bunch of worksheets and just do one thing, as opposed to preparing a lot of different things if you're not comfortable with it. So like I said, I can't speak to every credentialing program in the state, but I know Cal State East Bay does theirs. I want to say I think Berkeley has it in theirs. I know Cal State San Bernardino, Claremont Graduate, where I went, had focused on UDL, but not everyone utilizes what they learned in a credentialing program and apply it. It is very different learning than when you get to the classroom. It's completely different.
Right. But it's good to start for exposure, at least. I'm glad to hear that those universities are looking into it or incorporating it. Thank you for answering.
Yeah, I can't speak for the general education programs, but I'm currently in a special education program, and we are doing a lot of classes on UDL, like almost all of our the method courses, they have heavy on UDL. So at least we get something when we get into the field. And I'm pretty sure Notre Dame also doing UDL.
Yeah, Notre Dame has a really great special ed master's of education program. So I was just interested to know if they were doing this or incorporating it.
Yeah, I think I have a couple of friends who graduated from there, and pretty sure they are learning about UDL. All right, those are great questions. Thank you so much.
I have another question.
Yes.
So, I feel like a lot of education right now is very centered on test score results and showing your learning. That's like the marker, right, to show that you learned something because you did well on the standardized test. If a school is focused on using UDL, how well does that translate into standardized test scores?
Michelle, can you ask it one more time? Sorry. I think I got the question, but just to make sure I'm clear.
I'm just saying, like, if a school is focused on their students using UDL in the classroom, do we know, are there any like statistics on how, you know, it matches up between a student that learns in like the traditional sense, and their standardized scores, and then a student that was just doing UDL and what their standardized scores would be like? Like what like the state testing? I don't know the names of any of them, but
Like CASP.
yeah.
Aspect testing. I'd have to look at research to directly answer your question. I think it's hard to answer as well because there's so many aspects of UDL that may go in and out of a classroom. To be able to really attribute that to success or lack of success on state testing and standardized testing.
Right.
But I would have to dig into some research to actually accurately answer your question.
Because I'm just thinking about is, you know, like, what are the reasons why, you know, a school district would say, we don't want to use these different kinds of frameworks. We want to just use the traditional ones because we know that's like what works, to get our students, you know, to have our students have like high test scores. Because I mean, I love the concept of UDL, but is it something that, or what motivates school districts to say we want our teachers to use this framework in the classroom?
I think I would say that that's more of like a district level question. You know, like MTSS was adopted in 2015, but it's not like this legal mandate thing that schools have to participate in or have to do. So I think that's like a district level question, and whether, and like just, and districts and site principals and teachers who decide to take this very active role in adopting this mindset. I don't know how they come to those decisions, right? Like I know what I came to as a, you know, as an educator and what I feel like my students needed. And so we can't really answer that question because it's a huge question. And whatever decisions districts make is based on a lot of variables and a lot of information that may not just be test scores.
So when you decided to use UDL in your classroom, that was a personal decision. Like you're like, I know UDL is a great framework to work, you know, that works with all students. So I'm going to use it. Like no one said, Zoni, you have to use it.
No. And when I was doing UDL, I didn't know it was called UDL, but I also remembered the kind of learner that I was, and I wanted, not learner, I remembered the kind of student I was, like as far as like how I felt about school, and I wanted to just do the opposite of how I was taught. So that is what drove me.
So you're motivated by your own experience.
Correct. So I don't, that wasn't, UDL was not this adoption by my school and we were all trained in it. That didn't happen for me. I wasn't fortunate enough to have that. But I did use a lot of principles of it, because that is how I wanted my students to feel. I wanted them to feel successful.
And I think for me, it's very much the same. Like it's all around the engagement. Like educators want their students to be engaged with their learning. So like Zoni, the reason why she and I connect so much about it, because we were both doing so many elements of UDL without calling it UDL throughout the early 2000s, like when I started teaching, that I realized, oh, wow, I was doing a lot of these aspects because I wanted all of my students engaged in their learning. And then most importantly, around action and expression, I wanted them to be able to express what they were learning in the way that was most beneficial for them. And so I would always have menus and like different options, from write an essay to do a play to all these types of things that demonstrate their learning. I just didn't know at that time because UDL wasn't this big popular thing. But now that I reflect upon it, I was doing UDL because I was making sure all my students engaged in their learning.
I think we have a raised hand from Oscar Flores Fernandez. Go ahead, Oscar.
Yes, regarding the comments that you guys are making, it comes back to a little bit of how parents are going to pass this information. Like Augustine asks, like, okay, how does this impact the school? And then what you're talking about, Michelle, about how those teachers come about. But also what Chad said is the experience of teachers as to whether they utilize it or not. So as a parent, great information. As a past teacher instructor from San Francisco State, I saw some of these things. But having this knowledge and saying to my teacher, to the principal, have you thought about it? Have you utilized it? I feel like you guys are contradicting yourself as to it's a district decision, or it's a principal decision, or it's a teacher decision as to really go at it and engage on it, as well as experience, and as to being able to utilize. Yeah, we want the best for the students, but if the teacher, as Chad mentioned, if they didn't have the experience in their background when they were taught or when they were going through school, it's going to be hard to assimilate some of those strategies. And right now, I'm really seeing so many days off for teacher training for either the math curriculum, the English curriculum, the new stuff that they're coming in, and then you're trying them a new strategy. So I feel like, what is the takeaway from this? To just give the information to the teacher and say, are you willing to try? To give the information to the principal and say, have you really evaluated your students as to, are they getting the most out of it? Are you trying to find out how to get the student to feel a sense of accomplishment, even though they might not getting the test results from the standardized testing? And seeing some of the comments and some of the things is like kind of contradicting, and at the same time, not knowing what to take this information and how to utilize it best for our schools, our sites, or our educators. I know it's a little bit all over the place, but at the same time, it was points that were kind of coming out all over the place and contradicting themselves. Thank you.
Mr. Flores Fernandez, thank you for your message, or for sharing your concerns. I think that, or not I think, I know that the district is rolling out a comprehensive plan that includes UDL as a core expectation for practices in the classroom and at school sites under the direction of the principals, and that there's multiple professional development strands and opportunities happening. So I would encourage you, definitely, you could bring this up with your site principal and share that you attended this evening, and that you've had the overview. And it sounds like you have a lot of experience as well in teaching. So while everybody who I speak to about UDL will maybe have a different slant, there is a comprehensive plan in the district for making sure that this is a core part of instruction for all students.
Thank you so much for answering that, Maeve. I'm so glad you're here tonight, because I don't know a lot what's going on, internally. So that's great to know that our district is moving forward with implementing UDL and providing the training, ongoing support. And that's we are on board with UDL. That's great. I'm very happy to hear about that. And there was a question about some extracurricular classes. Michelle's been answering that. With extra programs, what we've been learning, Michelle, do you want to share about extracurriculars that, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, so I recently learned, and these are like after school programs versus like programs that are through other organizations. that students with disabilities should be able to participate in their child's after school programs, like Lego class, like you mentioned, painting, like art classes, whatever your schools have, that they're supposed to give you your child a 504 plan, which would be separate from an IEP. And then they would have supports needed provided by the school district. Or if they don't need them, then they should be able to just participate. But that's something to ask your child's teacher about and principal about. If you wanted your child to do something that happened, something that's happening after school at their school.
Thank you. I'm realizing we're over 8, and I'm gonna let you go, Chad and Zoni. Thank you so much. We have a little bit of scepter business after here. But thank you so much. It was amazing. Thank you for your time, for your energy, for your advocacy. Thank you. I hope to see you again next year for another presentation.
Yeah, thank you everyone and have a great night.
Thank you. Okay, yes, so we still have a couple of things to promote. Let's see. If you have to go, you have to go. But we'll have 10 more minutes. Where is my presentation? Yeah, just a couple more things. And okay, so if you want to join Scepter, we're always looking for just members, and you get our emails and some information when you join, and your membership is so important to us. That helps us organize meetings like tonight and monthly meetings. And we are actually looking for new board members. So if you're interested to make a difference, to be involved in the community, to actively participate in creating a disability awareness event or creating a social event or fundraise, please reach out to us. We're looking for new members. There's a lot of position open. Just give write us an email. There's actually a form. If you scan this or go to the link, there's a form you can fill out. And there's a chat. What's in there? Okay, perfect. Thank you, Michelle. Michelle put the link in the chat. And I think that's all. Oh, thank you for being here. That's all.